Hello, my name is Austin, and today we're going to be talking about the Progressive era and also moving into the New Deal enactments that FDR put in place. We're going to be talking about a few different groups of people, including women, African Americans, and farmers in particular. These were some of the more mainly affected groups during this time period where there was actually a lot of social and political reform going on. Um, this time period between the end of the Civil War and all the way up to World War II is actually very good for America. We see that there was a lot of change going on, and change is an integral part of everybody's life. But to see it kind of move so quickly in different fashions, not just socially, where people stand up, such as women fighting for their right to vote for suffrage. Um, we also see there's a lot of political reform going on once FDR takes office after the Great Depression or during the Great Depression. Um, so, first off, we're going to start with talking about women during this time period. After the Civil War, there were a lot of casualties, as we know, but this left many women widowed from their husbands, which meant that they had to take on a lot more responsibilities around the house, not just, the housekeeping and taking care of the children and cooking and cleaning, all the things that you would see in a traditional Victorian household, but also women had to find ways to bring in an income because there was not a man around during this time period to actually, you know, uh, bring an income in. So women started to see that they could accomplish quite a bit more than they were given credit for. This is very good because this starts to usher in a social change, which uh, women start to stand up and express themselves because they feel, wait a minute, I'm taking care of this household. I'm bringing in an income. Why don't I have a say in the government? Why is it only white males? Why is it only males that are having say in this system? So um, we start to see this shift. Um, there's a couple different like subgroups within the category of women during this time period. I'm gonna kind of bring it down to about three different groups. There's your kind of more extremist, where they are ready to fight for every kind of right that a male has in complete equality. There's the moderates, where they're just concerned with a few things, such as voting. That was one thing that women were able to come together on very early and agree on, that they wanted the right to vote because they believed they needed to have a voice, since a lot of them were in the household, and they also saw a lot of problems that were not seen by men because they were off at work, but women were at home and they see different, there's different sides. There's two sides to every story. So we start to see this, and women begin to, join together and form groups in order to pursue this social reform. Now, it wasn't until 1919 that the amendment was passed for the women's right to vote. But into the 20s, once this starts to change, we start to see a couple different um, things go on. Women start to become a little bit more sexually expressive. They're willing to show a little bit more skin. They want to be a little bit more free. They want to be able to express themselves instead of being told what to do by their male counterpart in as opposed to their the traditional ways. We see this the term flapper uh, mainly refers to younger women who were more um, gregarious and outgoing, willing to do things that weren't considered very womanly by previous, more conservative ideas. So, moving on, um, women were able to come together and, you know, agree upon some things, but then they kind of split off once they had the right to vote. They couldn't really come together as well as they did to bring this suffrage in. So we start to see a slower kind of progression after their after they gain their right to vote. Not to say that it's completely stopped because it's still going on today. But let's move on to our next group, the African Americans. This also kind of ties in with the whole women having to bring an income in thing, particularly in the South. Once the African Americans were freed after the Civil War during the Reconstruction era, there was a lot of shift in movement of these former slaves. Many of them actually, believe it or not, decided that they were not going to live where they were on their plantation or wherever their slave owner was, and they moved to a different place. A lot of them moved up north, but this left the South in a pretty fragile position. It's kind of it kind of got a little hairy there for them for a little while. It was hard for them to find labor. The market was struggling for farming, and this kind of started to set the stage as time progressed for more for things like the Dust Bowl to occur in the 1930s, because these farmers are so desperate to get their to get the money that they deserve from farming, that they're just over farming the land, and it ends up tearing everything up and ruining it. But but back to the point that the African Americans, they move off, and this becomes a very it's a very slow start, a very slow change. Many people are still set in their ways with racism at this time period, still in the 20s. Jim Crow laws didn't get uplifted until the 60s. There's still segregation. Slowly they're gaining more and more rights, but it wasn't as quickly as the women were at this time period. I think it was more because the women most of the women have already had kind of a voice somewhat through their husbands, and they had the confidence to kind of go up, as opposed to the African Americans have always been enslaved, and they were kind of trying to keep a low profile. So this is what may have slowed the social reform for African Americans to be more accommodated in society during this time period. Our final point here would be our farmers, which I kind of just touched point with, but this really has to do with the FDR's New Deal. A lot of landowning farmers really enjoyed his some of the New Deal implements that he enacted. One of which was the Agricultural Adjustment Act of 1933. This actually subsidized farmers for not farming during specific years, so they could allow the soil to re-nitrogenate, and you can have a better crop yield the next year. So the government would actually pay farmers to not farm so their land could actually get the nutrients back in it that it needed in order to produce a good amount of crops, because this is what actually ended up leading to the Dust Bowl with all this over farming because of the disparity of the situation in the South. But as far as, comparing and contrasting social and political reforms, it really seems like the social reforms do take quite a bit longer. There's a lot more collaboration that's not initially together, say as such a group like Congress or something like that, where legislators can get together and form some kind of new idea to help people such as like landowning farmers, in a situation where it would be a political reform. But with with females gaining their right to vote, it kind of took longer because you had to get everybody on board. You had to get enough people on board to gain enough support in order to get to the point where they had the right to vote and they were getting the respect that they wanted. And then it kind of continued from there afterwards on to where we are today, where there are still some inequalities, especially between races and different ethnicities, people from different backgrounds. But it's slowly starting to kind of merge more together with the equality, but there is still great disparity today with everything from income to education and everything, just based on where you live and what your background's from. So we're a long way from being perfect, but during the 1920s it was a big step for us as Americans to actually go through with these large social and political reforms during this time period, because it happened so quickly. And for the people to be collaborating with us, or people to be collaborating in order to make these social reforms, really shows how our government actually does kind of work for the people. But the political reforms seem to be a little bit quicker and more effective for actually fixing certain little problems, because you have an actual group of people that is actually formed together to make these informed decisions. So that's all we have today. So have a great time.